After a wild weekend of wrestling, how did the Big Ten rankings look? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to the Fanco Wrestling Show here for Big Ten Tuesday. And I thought this was a good time to look at the Big Ten rankings as they currently stand, because it was a wild weekend, not just on an individual level with all the upsets, but there were some big team upsets as well. I wanted to dive in some of those upsets and kind of how that shifts the ranking. So these are my rankings, the Fanco Wrestling rankings for the Big Ten. And first, I have to talk about the top four teams. The top four teams actually remain unchanged. It's the fifth team that kind of we get into some of the changes and shifts in the Big Ten rankings. The first team, the number one team, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Like, it's not a big surprise there, but we had to talk about their dominant performance against Minnesota because they absolutely dominated Minnesota with that win. They beat them pretty bad, and I actually have a full recap up here on the Fanco Wrestling channel. Talked about it in Wrestling Headlines the other day. And now, look, the Iowa Hawkeyes, as far as rankings are concerned, all of their guys, every single one of their guys is in the top 10, and actually the top 9. Nelson Brantz is the lowest ranked Iowa Hawkeye, which I fully expect him to be in the top 8 at least at some point in the rankings before the Big Ten championships even come about. But it's going to be tough with some of the postponements that have been happening, and I'll kind of talk about Michigan in just a second. But upcoming on their schedule, they do have Illinois this weekend, Purdue, who just suffered a couple of unfortunate losses, Ohio State and Penn State. So they do have a tough upcoming schedule, and I don't want to just fly by that because they're going to have a tough upcoming couple of weeks. But they're looking really, really dominant this year. Nebraska is the number 2 team right now. Now listen, I am in the minority when it comes to a lot of these rankings because almost every other news outlet has Nebraska as the fourth-ranked Big Ten team. They have Iowa, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska. I believe, and I had Nebraska at number 2 at the beginning of the year in the Big Ten rankings because they are bringing back a lot of guys. All their guys, most of their guys, I think 8 of them are ranked in the top 25. 8 or 9 of them are ranked in the top 25. Right now, 8 of them are ranked in the top 25. They have 4 guys in the top 8, including Cronin, Red, Labriola, Schultz, Venz right there too. They have a lot of tough guys in their lineup, and they so far right now, as the season has gone on and progressed, they have wins over Minnesota, over Northwestern, and over Maryland. So their big loss was to Iowa, and that put a damper on, it was an unfortunate first loss of the season for them. It kind of put a damper on them and a lot of other teams, but it just showed, I think, more, not that Nebraska's a bad team or anything, because they're not. It just showed how dominant the Iowa Hawkeyes are. So I think that looking at their upcoming schedule now, the team that you have to be on the lookout for Nebraska that could potentially upset them, it would be Rutgers, who'd have to be looking for a win from Aguilar and Poznansky, who've been wrestling well this season. And then maybe Nebraska would shift down. But right now, until Penn State or Michigan beat them, until they would actually beat them in a duel, I have to keep Nebraska at number 2. As far as Michigan, you may know Michigan has canceled the upcoming, or I guess postpone the next 2 weeks of competition, which essentially wipes out the duels between Iowa, Michigan, as well as Michigan and Illinois, Michigan, Penn State. So we're not going to be seeing any of those duels in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully we get that after that. I really have serious doubts we're going to with how tightly packed the Big Ten schedule is. This was a statement put out by Michigan wrestlers and athletes just asking the administration, asking the university to please allow us to compete. And I hope that they do change their decision. But again, I just have serious doubts that's going to happen. Their best win so far this season is over Rutgers. They are 3-0. They had an off week this past week. And we'll see what happens. If those upcoming dual meets are postponed, their only teams left to wrestle are going to be Ohio State and Michigan State. So only 2 more dual meets for Michigan is what we could be seeing until the Big Ten championships. My fingers crossed that we get upcoming duels, but I don't know. And then Penn State, A lot of people wonder why Penn State is still in the rankings. I should say a lot of people. I've seen a couple comments like, why is Penn State still in the rankings? They haven't even wrestled yet. And yes, they haven't wrestled yet because of their postponements and duels the last couple of weekends. But they have 9 guys in the top 25. Their only loss in the Big Ten in the last year is to Iowa, and they're coming back with a strong team. A lot of young guys and a lot of young talent, but some proven talent. Not quite yet in college, and that's why we can't I don't believe that Penn State should be the number 2 team like a lot of these other outlets have, but they are the reigning NCAA champs. They should be in the top 4 in the rankings. Maybe they should be higher, whatever you think, but they have Northwestern and Indiana on their schedule this weekend. And now we get into the changes as far as what else is happening this weekend. And the big dogs to talk about right now are Illinois, who move up to number 5, previously the number 8 team. Right now, Illinois is 4-0. They have been crushing it this season. This past weekend beat Purdue, who's top team in the Big Ten. And unfortunately, Purdue suffered a couple of losses this weekend. But right now, Illinois still has 3 undefeated wrestlers. And Dylan Duncan, Dan Bronigal, and Luke Luffman, guys have just been stepping up. It's including Luke Luffman right here, who has wins over Tate Orndorff and Trent Hilger on the season thus far. And I expect him to only continue to do better. Mikey Carr, although he got stuck by Sammy Sasso just a couple weeks ago, he's still been wrestling fine since then, and I expected a recovery from that. I mean, Sammy Sasso in his cradle is just deadly, so that's nothing crazy there. This weekend they have Iowa, and let's talk about the rest of Illinois' season, because right now they're sitting at number 5, and they do have Iowa upcoming this weekend. I don't expect them to pull off anything crazy there. And then Minnesota, Northwestern, and Nebraska ahead of them. It's going to be tough for Illinois in the upcoming weeks. No Michigan in this upcoming weekend, but it's going to be tough for them. Could they go 4 wins straight and then 4 losses straight? I actually don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. Big Ten's kind of wild this year. Next, let's talk about number 6 is Minnesota. They actually are at number 6, lost to Iowa, 2-2 right now. And then that moves us on to number 7 in Ohio State, who has a loss to Illinois, but they recently beat Rutgers in a very back-and-forth duel that came down to the wire. An exciting duel. Some great matches, including if you watch Sebastian Rivera versus D'Amelio. That was a match that's actually on YouTube you can check out. Also, upsets for Rutgers from Poznański over Rocky Jordan, and that was one of my favorite matches of this past weekend just because of the back-and-forth nature of the match. Each of those guys just took turns taking takedowns on the other guy until Poznański actually ended up getting the last takedown in the third period with about 30 seconds left. What a great, exciting match that was. Hoffman for Ohio State beat Billy Janzer, and Orndorff put the duel away, giving Ohio State the win over Rutgers. So they're kind of at that number 7 spot. They can't be over Minnesota. I don't have them over Minnesota. Some outlets do, but I just don't have them there right now just because of the quality of wins and losses. Minnesota's 2-2, Ohio State's 2-1, but Wisconsin improved to number 8. And Eric Barnett, I mean, he just pushed the way forward for Wisconsin to get that win over Purdue with a huge pin over Devin Schroeder. And, I mean, just a crazy pin for him, and that propelled him into the rankings. He's now a top 20 ranked wrestler. Previously, Wisconsin was number 12, and I'll be honest, like, Wisconsin, it's kind of a down year for them, especially with their loss of Seth Gross. And I didn't have a lot of high expectations, but they pulled off a big win because I've kind of been riding a Purdue high, and I thought that Purdue was going to pull off some big things this year. I still have hope that they will. Maybe we'll see what happens by the end of the year, but definitely in the upcoming years. But Wisconsin, I thought it was a down year for them, and it still kind of is. They only have a couple guys ranked in the top 25, and they do have losses to Ohio State and Illinois. But with this win over Purdue and with upcoming matches against Nebraska and Penn State, we'll see if they can rise higher. Their best chance to get higher in the rankings is going to be wrestling against Minnesota. If they can pull off an upset there, which, again, it's unlikely, but you never know. I didn't think that they were going to get this win against Purdue, and they did, and that's why they are in the top 8. Purdue dropped to number 9 with their loss to Wisconsin. Previously, number 6 losses to Illinois and Wisconsin dropped them down. They will wrestle Rutgers and Minnesota this weekend, which does actually give them a chance to bump back up if they get a win over Minnesota. That could actually help Purdue in the rankings right now. And then rounding out the top 10 is Rutgers. Rutgers rounds out the top 10 with an incredible, unfortunate loss this weekend, but they still have a great lineup, an incredible duel, I should say, with Ohio State. It was so close down to the wire, and this rounds out your top 10. In the bottom is Michigan State, Northwestern, Indiana, and Maryland, still looking for that win. And these are your Big Ten rankings for this week. What do you think? Are you agreeing on these rankings? Do you disagree with anything? If so, I would love to hear what you have to say down in the comments below. I know it's controversial a little bit putting Nebraska at number 2, even putting Ohio State under Minnesota. So please let me know your thoughts down below.